Hi there, welcome to another episode of Insights with NetSupport with me, Mark Anderson, Head of Education at NetSupport. You can follow me on Twitter at ICT Evangelist, and of course you can follow NetSupport at NetSupport Group. On the show today, I'm delighted to have someone who is a true expert and entrepreneur when it comes to supporting young people with their activities online. Online safety is something which is important for all of us. We're all teachers and supporters of online safety when it comes to young people in the classroom. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome co-founder, former teacher of the award-winning Natterhub, the one, the only, Caroline Allams. Welcome to Insights, Caroline. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Now, you're very, very welcome. Looking forward to a busy week ahead. And I mean, this will be going out after BET, so let's not talk about too much about what we're going to be doing at BET. But yeah, it's always a great place to connect and to sort of network and learn about the latest things in technology. You're a former BET Award winner yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. That was a moment of great excitement for Manjit and myself, and for the rest of the team to get that kind of recognition at such an esteemed level for a relatively new company was just a huge moment for us. So yeah, we're also finalists this year as well. So yeah, very excited to see how that goes. But even being a finalist is amazing, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm very proud to say that we're finalists in 2 categories this year as well
Oh,
ourselves. So
that's
fingers crossed for all. Fingers crossed we all do well. But I'd say
absolutely.
it's great recognition either way, isn't it? For those people who don't know you, Caroline, could you talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit about Natterhub and how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. So my background is education. I am a former primary school teacher. I've taught mainly in the UK and in international schools, British international schools, in Hong Kong, Barcelona, and Amsterdam. So I am passionate about forward-thinking approaches to education, and I really had the idea for the initial kind of concept for Natterhub when I was not just a teacher but also a parent as well, and I thought I needed to tackle the thing that frightened me the most, and that was this idea that we just put children on screens. And obviously a massive part of primary education is the social and emotional development, as it is when you're a parent of young children, really honing in on those soft skills that underpin kind of positive citizenship decisions. And yet when it came to being on screens, we just gave children iPads and we thought how clever they were that they could swipe across a screen without really unpacking the potential risk of that
Yeah.
abstract space.
Yeah, so what are some of the sort of most important things that parents and teachers can do to help sort of young people develop a healthy and responsible relationship with their technology whilst also staying safe online then, Caroline?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, I think the elephant really in the room is that we all have a complex relationship with technology and with our devices,
Mm,
and so it's not just a child thing. It's not just an issue for children, but I think as parents and teachers, for us to understand the gravitas of our relationship with phones, with tablets, and the impact that technology has on our lives. I think if that's at the front of your mind, and you're
mm.
also interested in creating impactful personal and social and emotional development, then it's important that we understand that if we are to parent and teach children face to face, then we also need to parent and teach them in a virtual environment as well. So I think that I think the thing is that we really try to guide parents and teachers towards having regular conversations about what children are doing on screens. And I know that we're going to be talking a bit more about that today. But I think really for teachers and parents to understand that the internet is a really abstract space for young children to understand. They enter into a digital world, and what they see they believe to be real and trustworthy. And of course, as adults, we try to remember that that's not the case. So I think it's just if you're teaching and educating and caring for children, and want to develop those self-protective skills in face-to-face environments, then it's important that we also consider what they are being challenged with on screens as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. As a parent myself, I see the importance of role modeling, and when I get my sort of screen time report at the end of a week, and it says how long I've been on Twitter, for example, I'm like, oh my goodness. And yeah, I'm having conversations with my children about, well, what would be a good use? Yeah, what would be a fair amount of time for you to have on TikTok in the course of a day? And they're like, 5 hours, 6 hours, and obviously, your head's going, that's too much. But when you come and look at your own usage as well, and you see that you're using it an awful lot yourself as well, it's difficult to role model it, but it also helps highlight those issues, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that this is where and how our children are playing as well. It's not all that we need to get children off screens. It's about making it as safe as possible and as enjoyable as possible, because we need to validate their time on screen. And I'm, as part of Natterhub, we are very concerned around primary age children. And I think just as when you enter, the world of parenting, you don't join them usually as they enter their teens. It's a journey right from the beginning all the way through. And I think it's just about instilling that healthy approach and attitude and open forum for discussions as soon as children are picking up screens.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And you touched on a point there about sort of the difference between good screen time and bad screen time, haven't you? How can parents and teachers help children, their children or children in their classrooms, to understand the potential risks associated with social media and other online platforms, but also at the same time sort of supporting to see the more positive aspects of these technologies? How can parents and teachers help their children with that?
Well, I think you've already mentioned a really key point, which is role modeling, and I think that role modeling to be a really clear directive for educators and for parents is crucial because we can't rely on the internet to provide that role modeling for children. So I think if parents have the opportunity to share the things that they love about technology, the reason they depend on technology, how they make best use, that's a great starting point. I think when it comes to preparing for social media, we can enable children to enter social media at a point where they are so much more prepared if we've had the right conversations and they have the awareness prior to entering that space. For the main part, children currently are eager to join social media and totally understand why. It's an exciting space, and as you've already mentioned, there are many positives to being able to navigate yourself safely and confidently around that space. But we shouldn't assume that children can do that without being taught how to do so. And I think as parents, are recognizing that there are certain conversations that children and parents can have prior to seeing the content that they are going to encounter on social media. So things like, understanding that most images will have been altered, just having that conversation, teaching children about the power of a camera and what the boundaries are in using that camera when you are communicating online. Understanding that when something's written down in short form, as it often is within social media, it may be misinterpreted even if the emoji that you use is not right. So again, it's just teaching children really small baby steps in the same way that we do when we look at early literacy skills. Let's look at early media literacy skills in the same way that we are looking at relationships and health education. Let's look at digital relationships and digital health. And so that we can really, naturally and age appropriately address the things that children need to know, so that they're not just kind of thrown out there and everybody's crossing their fingers hoping for the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned about the use of the camera. Obviously, children like to and want to share to their friends about how their day's going, or the meal they've had, or the latest toy on their birthday, or whatever it is. But what steps can parents and teachers share sort of take to ensure children are aware of the importance of protecting not just sort of image personal information, but other personal information when they're using social media, Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, we work very closely with the Internet Watch Foundation, who are, an incredible organisation who deal with the very darkest aspects of children being online. And I know that you'll be aware that they remove images and videos of children who have been coerced into creating content that's then shared of children being abused. We understand from their statistics that there is a real grave acceleration of this content, and this has been exacerbated by the pandemic. This has been made worse by children spending so much of their lives online, and I think one way of preventing that online vulnerability is to have these important discussions as young as possible, because the spike that the Internet Watch Foundation have seen in this online vulnerability is primarily from girls aged just 7 to 11 years. So this really is a primary school issue that needs to be tackled in an age appropriate and non-threatening way, but to really enable children to understand that, of course, it's great fun to create images and have fun in a safe environment with family and close friends, but that there also needs to be the need for a healthy caution, or healthy fear we sometimes use as well, so that children understand that yes, there's fun to be had, but I know that there are boundaries. I know how far to go. I know that if I'm using the camera function, I've got to have it authorized through a trusted adult, that it is part of a wider conversation. And I think one of the we work very closely with parents. We offer a lot of regular online safety webinars for parents, because it's an overwhelming topic, and often parents tell us, I don't know where to start. So based on
I wanted to ask you, I count myself being really fortunate as a parent to know what I know, because it helps inform how I support my own children. But many parents obviously don't have that kind of knowledge. What can Natterhub do to support schools in making parents more aware of these sorts of things? And it sounds like you're doing things already.
Yeah, well, we as part of a Natterhub subscription, the schools have obviously not just access to all the interactive lessons and the program and the gated platform environment that looks and feels like a social media site, but it's a way of learning through doing. And as part of that, teachers have the opportunity to share parent logins, so that really that important messaging is going from the lessons back into the home environment. But as a result of all the work that we've been doing with parents, and the online safety webinars that we've been offering, which actually are free to any school, regardless of whether they are part of Natterhub subscription or not. We're just about to launch in the next few weeks Natterhub Home, which is a program for parents to use at home, and gives children a step-by-step age-appropriate guide right the way through the point where they have their first mobile phone. But I think that, you know, as you said, it needn't be overwhelming if we are all working together to help the wider community in taking care of children online. And I think it goes down, it really comes back to just having the right, relevant, impactful conversations at the right time, so that you can share the positives as well as the negatives.
Thanks, Caroline. It's really interesting you mentioned Natterhub Home. One of my next questions is almost like you've preempted what I'm about to ask you. But one of my next questions was going to be, what advice could you give to parents and teachers who might be struggling to keep up with the latest developments in online safety and digital citizenship? I'm guessing that Natterhub Home will facilitate that, so they can stay informed about the latest updates and how they can engage more in this sort of critical work.
Yeah, well, we know that what makes it overwhelming is that parents and teachers are have a struggle with understanding every platform, every game, every evolution, every next step of all the things that children are doing online. So our approach, we flip it and we really focus on something that parents and teachers are really great at, and that's managing behavior and teaching soft skills. So the approach that Natterhub takes is that we know that if we really teach those soft skills that underpin positive digital citizenship, the right online behavior, we know that regardless of the platform, the children are entering different digital spaces with the understanding of where those boundaries are, their expectation of how they are supposed to behave, the need to call on a trusted adult, that hopefully, you know, that they're not having automatic access to the internet during the primary years. That's part of what we recommend for primary school age children, so that really the parent or the adult is still in charge of the technology, and it's, you know, we're getting there.
It's a huge topic, isn't it? And the thing is, even if you are au fait with some of the platforms, there's always a new platform that then comes out, and you know, even on top of that, within each of those different separate platforms, there are new updates all the time. Like, did you know, for example, I only found this out this week, Twitter, 280 characters, great, but you can now actually write thousands of characters. It just truncates the first 280 and you can expand it to then read loads more. Things change all the time, don't they? It's just phenomenal. And how can you stay on top of all of that when you've got everything else you have to be thinking about as a teacher and as a parent as well? And we're almost out of time, Caroline. I wanted to ask you one final question. I wonder if you had any insights. If parents are, you know, really concerned about technology's impact on mental health and well-being, because we read so much about it. I've seen the changes in my own children, you know, particularly since the pandemic. When you're worried about, you know, you hear names like Andrew Tate being bandied around, and misogyny and the issues around that as well. You know, you got any sort of final insights in how parents and teachers can ensure that children can use technology in ways that supports their overall sort of health and happiness?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've mentioned two, you know, really important issues there, and again, it's even more about the greater need for having the right conversations without the alarmed response. And I think as parents, we are programmed to react with fear for our children's safety. But actually, you know, it's really interesting when we ask children about their digital experiences. I know, you know, my daughter's 15. The subject of Andrew Tate came up. You know, it was really interesting to hear her take on it. And even though she can be appalled by the concept of, you know, the things that he is talking about, it's really interesting to hear a 15-year-old's perspective in the school environment. And I think as parents, it's important that we are calm and reflective and mindful of our children, not having digital shame, because I think even from a very young age, you know, if a young child comes towards you with something that, you know, that you hope that they haven't seen, there's always a tendency to be like, what were you looking for? Why are you looking at this? And of course, we know that the internet is very capable of throwing up all sorts of content that was never intended for children's viewing. But I think it's having that awareness of, you know, if children are going to be unaided online, then we really need to have that virtual hand-in-hand approach where nothing's off the conversation table, that we're there for them, we're ready to support with their issues and their challenges that they're facing, and really not to shut something down. I think as soon as you shut something down, then it just goes underground, and that's certainly the case of, you know, children being online, which is this massive disparity between what we as adults and teachers think children are doing online and what's actually happening online, which is why the Natterhub lessons have really been designed to lift that lid in a safe space where children have the opportunity to discuss their experiences and reflect on how they've reacted.
Listen, so many takeaways and things to reflect on there, and I always come away thinking of new things to have conversations with my children about after having a chat with you, Caroline. So thank you for giving some time to join me on Insights today. I've been sharing some of your socials across the bottom as the show's been going on. But if you're listening in rather than watching in, if you want to follow Caroline, you can do so on Twitter at Caroline Allams. That's ALLAMS. You can also follow Natterhub on Twitter at Natterhub. Natter, like you're having a Natter hub, like hub. And of course, you can learn more about Natterhub by visiting their website, natterhub.com. Thanks again so much for taking time to join me, Caroline. Loads of great golden nuggets there. Thanks for joining me. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers. Bye.